Hello, and welcome to Homegrown KC, a podcast dedicated to exploring Kansas City's fascinating history and sharing stories from its rich past. I'm your host, Laura. Join me today as we explore a piece of Kansas City's history. Before I dive into today's announcements, a small disclaimer. This show is my own and no reflection of the values and or mission of the Black Archives of Mid-America. Oh my god, how is it May already? This month seriously flew by. End of May. It's the end of May. Just so fast. I feel like it should still be the beginning of May, but I am not upset that it's the end of May. The weather is finally actual summer. Hopefully we're not getting any more rain, because we've had enough for a while. And my garden is in bloom, which makes me so incredibly happy. Thank you for waiting. Thank you for your patience waiting for this episode, waiting for the Truman saga to finally end. Here we are. This is the final episode of Topic 2, Harry S. Truman from Series 8. We the People. I said that wrong. It's 2024. We the People. So, let's dive in. Recap. Truman's born in 1884. After high school, he bounces around from job to job. He's always going back to the family farm, though. He joins the army in 1917, fights in World War I, gets married in the summer of 1919 after returning to the U.S. His wife is Bess. I didn't read hardly anything about her, but she seems great. He opens his own business, but it's not long before he befriends Tom Pendergast, and Tom launches him into local politics. Truman becomes senator in 1928. His focus is military. It's a lifelong thing with him. He creates the Senate Special Committee to investigate the National Defense Program, aka the Truman Committee, because he toured the military bases and he saw that they were shit. They were in really bad condition and they needed some TLC. He also championed the inclusion of black men into the Air Force. So we get the Tuskegee Airmen, aka Red Tails, because of him. He's not the only one that could have done it, but he is the one that did do it. And the Airmen proved to be pivotal, to the Allies' success in World War II. Because of this, more so even actually the Truman Committee rather than the Tuskegee Airmen. In 1944, he's chosen as FDR's running mate. They win in 1945, and less than 3 months later, FDR is suddenly unalive, very unexpectedly. And now Truman is the President of the United States of America. Okay, so same as before, Laura's not a fan of military history, so we are skipping the World War II portion of Truman's life, just like we skipped the World War I portion. Quick aside though, I realized as I was writing up my notes for this episode that it's crazy he was alive for both World Wars, and spoilers, he was alive for the Korean War. If he wasn't president at the time of World War II, then I have little doubt that Truman would have enlisted again and fought in both World Wars. And how many other people did that? Like, honestly, I bet it must have been in the thousands. Anyway, we're skipping his time as president. This episode is going to be all about his life after presidency, and I hope you find this really interesting because other than he who shall not be named, we never talk about them after they're no longer president. Also, the Truman Museum does a superb job discussing Truman's life, specifically when he's president. And I talked about that portion of his life in my Minnesota adventure, the Truman Library and Museum. So if you really want to know what that's like, you can listen to that episode. I want to say I did that in October 2023, fairly recently. Also, I am still in communication with Sadie and Mark from the Truman Library Museum about a Patreon episode, and I hope we can get that scheduled soon. I'll let you know when it happens. So if you want to hear from them, become a patron. Details on how to do so will be at the end of this episode. Jumping ahead, it is from 1945. to 1953, Truman is 69 years old. Sorry, I don't remember what year Bess was born, but they're only like 2 years apart in age. And he's no longer president. He's retired. Officially or unofficially. You can make your decision at the end of this. And their daughter, their only child, Margaret Truman, is 29. She met her eventual husband, Clifton Daniel, in 55, and they married in 56. They had 4 children: Clifton Truman Daniel, born in 1957, still alive; Harrison Gates Daniel, born in 1963, still alive; Thomas Washington Daniel, born 1966, still alive; and William Wallace Daniel, born 1959, died 2000. So I'm pretty sure I mentioned this in a previous episode. The Trumans kept their house in Independence, and they went back to visit and spent time at the home frequently. At least when he was a senator. I'm not sure how often it happened when he was prezi, because, security things. But after he's retired, they moved back into the house at 219 North Delaware Street, Independence. I might try to find a photo for y'all and put it on my Insta or website, because there's an image of it in this book that I've been reading, and it's a very nice house. Pretty sure it's Queen Anne style, which is one of, if not number one personal favorite architectural style. And this is really interesting to me. So, y'all know that the Secret Service protects the sitting president and their families. BTW, what's with this name? It's not a secret. We know you're there. Anyways, they also protect former presidents and their families, but that did not start until after the JFK assassination in 1964. So we're about to celebrate the America 250th anniversary in 2026. Yes, that sounds correct. So, for the first almost 200 years, I don't know when the Secret Service began, but we're just like, okay, bye, and that was it. I did read in the book that Truman and Bess were like, no, we're good, thanks. We don't want Secret Service hanging around, but, eventually they're like, okay, fine. So, during his time as commander-in-chief, they had put up a fence around the house. Again, security. And apparently Bess wanted to take it down when they returned home, but it was a very popular pastime for citizens to drive by or walk by the house like all the freaking time, and even stop for photos, so the fence stayed up. I agree, I would have too. I also probably would have been a little bit like, get off my lawn! Go away! According to Burns, the Trumans really wanted their privacy. They just wanted to be normal people, spend time with family, travel. Harry wanted to write his memoirs. Like I said, I don't blame him. I really value my privacy. But when you've walked the world stage so prominently for so long, it's very difficult, if not impossible, to then simply be average Joe. And it's not like they were misanthropic. This is a new word that I learned this past week. It means to dislike people, and I think it's a very fun word. They just wanted to live their lives without fears, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, yada yada. All very applicable to today, yes? But they did have their moments of, let's call it, visuality? I don't think I pronounced that correctly. When I wrote it down, I'm not even sure this is a word, but I was trying to look for a word that means, like, to be in the public eye, and Google is not helpful in that endeavor. Anyway, so Burns is like, yeah, they just want to be left alone, and then he lists all the stuff that they're doing, and I'm like, you know what? I feel like they're okay being out in the public. Because, Harry joined the 822 Club, which is another private old boys club. They did a lot of ribbon cuttings. He conducted the Kansas City Philharmonic, and, like, first of all, how did they feel about that? Because, like, he has no training. And I know that the Philharmonic is really talented, but you still do need the conductors, so are they like, okay, this is a ceremonial thing and we are not paying any attention to you, or... I just wonder what that experience was like for them. Anyways, he threw the first pitch at the KC Athletics first game. The Casey Athletics predated the Casey Royals. He helped raise money for the 1859 jail in Independence. It's a museum. And just honestly, they did a whole bunch of other stuff. So I'm like, you know what? I don't think they really wanted to be as alone as you are saying that they did, or as, because he did have a quote, I don't remember what it was now, as like they were saying that they wanted to be. They also maintained contact with subsequent, I'm having a really hard time with words at the moment, I'm not sure why, presidents, Kennedy, LBJ, Eisenhower, Nixon. Like, they had dinner with them and talked on the phone regularly and stuff. I don't know if that's normal, but it kind of does not feel normal. Or at least that's not normal for today. But, if you're a presidential historian, you can hit me up and let me know for sure. They took a cross-country road trip. They went to Europe. They went to Hawaii. Truman is continuing his activism in what's left of the Pendergast machine. So, remember, Pendergast was running Kansas City and very influential nationally. If you have not already done so, listen to Series 2, Paris of the Plains, which contains the Pendergast saga. I'm so fascinated by Pendergast. Anyways, he is sent to jail for tax evasion and fraud. He gets out and then, like, almost immediately dies because he's a very unhealthy man. And his nephew James, actually, I think it was when he went to jail, his nephew James took over what was left of the machine because several of the lieutenants also went to jail. But James is still running what's left of the machine. They are, like, way diminished in power. But Truman, as I have said in previous episodes, was also a member. Actually, I think I mentioned Pendergast at the top of this. He got into politics because of Pendergast. Pendergast helped him get elected to everything except for the presidency. So, all of that to say, they are still trying to promote certain candidates, political candidates, and James has a TV program, and Truman's like, yeah, I'll come on there, I'll help you. So, he's on TV. Harry gave multiple speeches for various political candidates, local and national. He hosted Robert Kennedy during his presidential run before he too was assassinated like his brother. This is an aside, but I found this little detail in the book and I loved it. So, in 1965, when LBJ signed the Medicare law, which created Medicare, he did that at the auditorium of the Truman Library. Like, it's a big enough deal on its own that we're getting this Medicare bill, but I love the poetry in it that it happened at the Truman Library because universal health care is actually something that Truman campaigned for while he was president, and it kind of sounded like, oh, we might get it, and then, of course, Congress shot him down. Not unusual. Very, very much like today. And obviously, we still don't have universal health care. Health care, like, I can go see the doctor, not health insurance, which is a total scam. But I can see how at the time that Truman would have been like, yes, we're finally moving in the right direction. And so, anyways, I just love that. Speaking of Truman Library, it opened in 1957, and Harry had an office there. If you visit, you can view his former office. And apparently he would, quote, go to work there every day until about 1964, then was a little bit less frequently. I mean, at that point, dude is very old. And then not at all after 1967. I have already heard one story about Truman from the library staff, and I cannot wait until I speak with Sadie and Mark, because honestly, they have to have so many more stories that have been handed down from library staff. Harry and world-famous artist, local artist, even though he's world-famous, he's from KC, Thomas Benton Hart became friends when Hart painted the mural at the library, still visible. It's gorgeous, of course. He also did a portrait of Truman. The library was designed by architects Edward Neild, I think I'm saying that right. It's Neil with a D. And Alonzo Gentry. Neil was born in 1884 in Shreveport, Los Angeles, died in 1955 in Casimo. He got his engineering degree from Tulane in 1906 and started his own architectural firm called Neil Somdahl, there's a hyphen there, Associates in 1934. Sorry about that. Neil Somdahl Associates, 1934. Alonzo was also from Independence, like Mr. Truman. He was born in 1887. He got his engineering degree from the Virginia Military Institute in 1908, and then a Bachelor of Science in Architecture from Columbia University in 1916. Most of his work was centered here in Kansas City, and he died here in 1967. His papers are housed at the Missouri State Historical Society. So even though Truman was the one who campaigned for and raised the money to build the library, once it was complete, he then donated it to the federal government. Today, all of the presidential libraries are run by NARA, which is the National Archives and Records Administration. It's a branch of the government. Not like Congress versus executive branch, but it's an arm of the government, for sure. So all library employees are employed by the federal government, which, when we have federal government shutdowns, means they're out a job. It sucks. There are only 15 libraries. We do not have one for every single president, because this is kind of a modern phenomenon. Like FDR was actually the first one. He's the one who started it all. Which means Truman is library number 2. That's pretty cool. But I don't know, like, it's different now. You don't get to be like, this is my library. Like, it just automatically belongs to NARA. But in the beginning, like, I see why Truman did it. It's very much tracks with his personality that he's like, okay, great, we have this. Here you go. But personally, I think I've been like, I'm gonna keep this. When I die, I will bequeath it to you. Right? Whatever. Harry S. Truman died at the Kansas City Research Hospital and Medical Center on Tuesday, December 26, 1972. He had entered the hospital on December 5th for some chest congestion. His funeral was a BFD for KC, as you can well imagine, and he is buried at the Presidential Library. Bess lived another 10 years. She is buried alongside her husband, and you can visit both graves today when you visit the library. That is all for today. Nice and quick. Love it. Thank you for joining me as we explored this piece of Kansas City history. If you have not already done so, please listen to parts 1, 2, and 3. Also, as I said, my minisode adventure, I said that backwards, adventure minisode to the Truman Library. And also listen to my newest adventure minisode, Miriam Urban Hike, available wherever you listen to podcasts. One last announcement before I cover my sources. I'm taking June and July off. I anticipate 1 or 2 more adventure minisodes during this time, and hopefully 1 or 2 Patreon episodes. Finally, again, thank you for your patience. But there will not be another episode for Series 8 until August, and that one will feature the history of the Kansas City Public Library, so I hope that you will all tune in for that. I already know that there's a huge history there, and it would be so easy to cover that for the rest of the year. That is, I'm telling you now, that is not going to happen. Absolutely not going to happen. It will be somewhat difficult, given my history, but that will be a single episode that gives a large overview of the history, probably with very few details. I do not have time to dig into it this year. I have other episodes planned that I still really want to cover. But definitely a future series on libraries in Kansas City. Speaking of, the latest banned book that my friend and I have read is The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. I said that wrong, I think. Margaret Atwood. She will be here in Kansas City to speak at the library in August, so we hope that we can go to that. I've not seen the TV show, and to be honest, I have really struggled to read this book. It's not been holding my attention, so I've mostly skimmed it. I've read a couple of summaries and analyses. It just, I don't know, I'm not in the right headspace for it. I don't know what's going on. Maybe if I try again in the future, I can get all the way through. But I did read the epilogue. And so without spoilers, if you also have not read it, that was fascinating. And I loved it because as a historian, I can say with absolute certainty that the events in the epilogue and the speech that is given in the epilogue is 100% accurate. If the events of this book were real, including the epilogue. Okay, you know what? I have to give a small spoiler. I'm sorry. Okay. So Handmaid's Tale, you're reading this and you get flashbacks, but you're like, at least I'm like, I don't get what's going on. How did we get here? How we got here is never fully explained. And then in the epilogue, it's this guy at a history conference, and it's like 150 years after the events of the book. And they're like, hey, this story that you've just heard is actually the oral history that was discovered on cassette tapes, because the book was written and set in the 1980s, and contains the memories of this woman who lived through this time. So it's like a conference of historians whose specialty is this specific moment in history to them. And the main speaker's like, here's how we found the cassette tapes, here's what we've been able to discover about how they were made, or about the people mentioned in them, because, no one's real name is given. That's a different thing. And, here's what we were able to learn. Here's what we are not able to learn from this cassette tape. And that is very much what would be discussed at a history conference, is an analysis of the source. It's very interesting to read. So, should you read the book? Actually, yes. I think elements of it are applicable to today. Obviously, elements of it are very applicable to the thoughts and fears of the 1980s. But if you read nothing else, I would say read the epilogue. Okay, maybe that wasn't the best advice. I'm sorry, I'm sure the author wants you to read the whole book. Anyways, thank you for listening to my little spiel. Sources for today's episode are, again, continuing with Brian Byrne's book, Harry S. Truman, His Life and Times, also the trumanlibrary.gov, and a little bit from the Nebraska State Historical Society website. There will be a link on my website to trumanlibrary.gov eventually. As you know, I'm perpetually behind in updating my website. But thank you for your patience. Thank you for listening. I hope you will consider becoming a financial supporter of the show. Again with the words. What is going on today? There are several ways you can do so. You can subscribe to patreon.com/homegrownkc or redcircle.com/homegrownkc. You can also give a one-time donation at redcircle.com/homegrownkc or at coffee.com/homegrownkc, and that is spelled ko-fi.com. You can give as little or as much as you want, even as little as $1 a month. Once you sign up and subscribe to the show, you will be charged on that day, and then on the first of every following month. If you become a Patreon, you get 3 things. 1, you get an item from the merchandise store valued at $5 or less. You get a shout out on every episode and social media post. So thank you for your continued support, Joan and Bjorn. Y'all are awesome. You also get access to exclusive bonus content featuring other local historians, archivists, and museum curators. Everyone who simply donates will receive a shout out on the next available episode, but you do not get access to that bonus content and you do not get anything from the store. So, become a patron, listen to me talk to people from the Truman Library. Also still want to talk to people from the Truman Farm. I think you will find that fascinating. If not, I have a ton of other Patreon episodes that I'm sure you will find something you like. Additionally, and this is pretty exciting, if you donate or become a member on Coffee, 1% automatically goes to help fight climate change. and any donations I receive on coffee will be used exclusively to buy a new laptop to start. My baby is 2 years old. She's really feeling it. She's actually doing really good today. I'm proud of her. But usually she's slow. She's feeling it. You can also send me stars on Facebook, which somehow through the magic of Facebook equal money. I don't fully understand how that part works. But if you cannot support me monetarily, which is totally cool, then you can still support me by liking, following, subscribing all of my social media pages. That's Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, Tumblr, and Twitter. I also have a YouTube channel. I am Homegrown KC on all of them. Make sure to rate and review me on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. You can visit my website for additional information on each topic. That's homegrownkc.wordpress.com. And that is the only place in which you can sign up for my newsletter. I will not spam you. You will get 1 email a month, usually at the beginning of the month. And it will have announcements and episode alerts, maybe someday in the future, some giveaways. But it's a great way to stay up to date with what's going on. So for example, you will be getting an email next weekend, and that will tell you what to maybe keep on the lookout for in June and July while I'm otherwise on break. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or episode suggestions, you can email me at homegrownkcpodcast@gmail.com, or you can send me a DM on any of my social medias. For merchandise, visit zazzle.com/store/homegrown_KC_store. That's zazzle.com/store/homegrown_KC_store. Thank you goes out to my very talented sister-in-law, Sarah McCombs, for the creation of my logo, to the Dear Misses for the use of their song Kansas City as the intro and outro music, and to local libraries, which enabled me to gather all of my research. And thank you for listening. Cheers!
You this tonight, 'cause I can't seem to shake this feeling, and I can't seem to get you off my mind. Thought I lost my nerve forever, and I know that it's now or never to try and see this through. Tie loose ends up with a bow and start anew. We could talk through the nights on the phone, but we toss and we turn all alone, and we both know that that's not the way we roll. Can you hear me calling out your name? 'Cause I swear I thought I'd heard the same. Don't overthink or undermine. Meet me in Kansas City tonight. And I woke from a dream that you said goodbye, and you left without a reason. Not a word to state your grievance, not a motive for your leaving. And it all seems crazy and unkind, and I miss my window to make you mine. I was broken and confused, and I woke up to me calling out for you. No more back to the back and the forth. No more dragging our feet on the floor. No more spinning the wheels, no, not anymore. Can you hear me calling out your name? 'Cause I swear I thought I'd heard the same. So don't overthink or undermine. Meet me in Kansas City.